Have you ever been so exhausted that you just didn't want to try anymore? Not the tiredness of your body, but the exhaustion of your soul. We live in a world where effort is praised and burnout is seen as weakness. A world where you've been holding yourself together for so long, where you've had to be strong, where you've had to look like you have it all figured out. That's why exhaustion isn't just a feeling anymore, it's become a place where you're stuck. But Carl Jung didn't call this collapse. He called it a turning point. Sometimes exhaustion doesn't come to force you to fight harder. It comes to remind you that you've drifted too far from your true self. Peace doesn't come when you're striving to reach it. It comes when you stop trying to be someone you're not. Stop chasing expectations and return to yourself, the self that's always been there, just hidden beneath layers of effort. This video isn't here to tell you to get up, be stronger, or push through. It arrives precisely when you're too tired to try anymore. Like a very gentle whisper, come back to yourself. When you're so exhausted you can't even talk anymore, stop for a moment and breathe. I know that feeling, the feeling when everything in life suddenly becomes too much. We're living in a time where people aren't exhausted from physical labor. They're exhausted from trying to hold themselves together to survive among countless expectations, standards, and comparisons. You're supposed to be strong, but you're not allowed to show that you're tired. But we carry so many roles every day that we can't recognize ourselves anymore. We move as if driven by inertia, while the heart gets left behind. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." It's no accident that we collapse when we've lived too long disconnected from our true selves. The soul doesn't signal with words, it signals with abundant, deep, profound exhaustion. The burnout you're feeling isn't a sign of weakness. It's an unconscious knock trying to get your attention. It's not here to destroy you. It's here to remind you of something long forgotten. A part of you is breathless, waiting to be seen, touched, heard. Society teaches us wrong. Society teaches us that when we're tired, we need to push harder. But Jung didn't see life that way. Exhaustion isn't the enemy. It's a messenger. It says, come back. Imagine a river. When you build a dam to make it flow according to your will slower or faster, the water builds up and pressures everything inside. Eventually, either the dam breaks or the river overflows in ways you can't control. Emotions work the same way. When you constantly try to hold it together, you're building invisible dams within yourself. And now you're tired not because you're failing, but because you've been resisting for too long. This exhaustion is an invitation to turn inward, to return to what you've abandoned, to face the simple question most people are afraid to confront. What am I actually feeling? Maybe you'll realize you're sad, lonely, scared, or that you no longer belong to the life you're struggling to maintain. And that's not failure, that's honesty. This is the moment when the outer shell cracks and your true self begins to emerge. Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." So if you're exhausted, don't try to overcome it. Don't try to be stronger. Don't try to immediately get up. You're not a warrior who must always be ready to fight. You're human. You feel, you hurt, and you have the right to stop. Let your exhaustion be a door to a place where you can be honest with yourself without performing for even a second. And there, sitting and just breathing without doing anything, you might hear a voice, very small, very soft, but deeply true. You've gone too far. Come home. You're burned out from living as a role for too long. Have you ever felt like you're living in a movie where someone else wrote the script? You say what you think others want to hear. You smile at the right times. You're understanding. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask every person creates to be loved, accepted, and belong to society. And to a degree, this mask is necessary. But nobody taught you that if you wear it too long, you'll forget where your real face is. You start living according to the world's expectations instead of what your heart needs. This is the deepest reason for your exhaustion. You're not tired because life is too hard. You're tired because you had to smile when you didn't want to smile. You had to stay silent when your heart wanted to speak. You learned patience instead of honesty. All of this gradually suffocates your inner self. I once heard about a woman who was always the pillar for everyone around her, always strong, always smiling. One night, while washing dishes, she suddenly stopped and felt she had no strength to continue because her soul wanted to cry. That moment wasn't collapse. It was the emergence of her true self that had been buried beneath the role. Imagine wearing a wooden mask. At first, it's light. But over time, every time you suppress an emotion, the mask thickens. Every time you say I'm fine, another layer slowly forms. The mask doesn't just cover your face, it starts pressing down on you, making it harder to breathe. And one day, you don't understand why you're so exhausted. It's not your body that's tired, it's your soul that's suffocating. This exhaustion isn't the enemy. It's a sign from your true self resisting. I'm still here. Don't abandon me. Have you noticed that in moments when you're alone, when you're no longer performing, the silence suddenly becomes so big you can't escape it? That's when you feel the sadness, the emptiness, or the sense of not knowing who you are. And that's the moment of the soul's return. We think authentic living is easy, but it's actually the hardest thing. Living authentically might mean someone doesn't like you, judges you, or leaves you. But that's also why authenticity is the most liberating thing. Only when you dare to drop the mask can you breathe, not with breath borrowed from the world, but with your own breath. You don't have to remove the persona all at once. Just start with very small things. One true sentence. I'm tired today. One moment where you're not trying to impress anyone. One moment where you choose your real feelings instead of the right thing. At first, it might feel weird or uncomfortable, but that weirdness is actually a beautiful sign. It means you're stepping outside your old form, taking your first real breath in years. That's how the self begins to live again. Meeting your shadow. When you start to remove the mask even a little bit, you'll notice another part beginning to move inside you. The shadow, the part that's not easy to look at, not easy to accept, but incredibly real. And this is where the journey back to your true self begins. There are feelings you never say out loud. Feelings you've buried deep because you believe they shouldn't exist. Anger, jealousy, the desire to be seen, the fear of abandonment. Turn called this part the shadow. Often we think we're tired from work, but most of the time we're tired because we've suppressed ourselves for too long. Fighting yourself is the most energy-draining battle a person can wage, but we fear that if we let our shadow emerge, we'll become worse, weaker, more broken. But the truth is the opposite. Jung said clearly, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You don't grow by only focusing on the good parts. You grow by noticing and embracing the parts you've been avoiding for so long. In other words, you don't heal by trying to be more positive. You heal by daring to see clearly what's really inside you. Emotional science confirms this. When an emotion is suppressed, the brain has to use energy to keep it below the surface. This keeps the sympathetic nervous system, the survival state, constantly active. Your body is always slightly tense. Your heart is fast. Your breath is shallow. Your mind is exhausted. You wake up heavy not because you didn't sleep enough, but because you didn't give yourself permission to feel. Imagine standing under a light. Your shadow is always with you, behind you. When you run from it, it stretches and becomes scary. But when you turn and look at it, you see it there standing quietly, like a natural part of you. So facing your shadow doesn't require a heroic act. Just a small step, an honest whisper, is enough. I'm sad today. One moment where you let your body sit instead of pushing forward. One tear. The shadow never comes to break you. It comes to say, see me? I belong to you too. When you no longer have the strength to run, to hold yourself together, you finally gain the ability to look at your shadow. And something very gentle happens. You realize you're not becoming darker. You become less exhausted, more whole, more honest, complete, closer to yourself. You'll see that you're not falling apart like you once feared. Instead, you return back to the most vulnerable center of your being, where you don't have to be anyone else. The exhaustion of holding on there is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working or striving. It comes from having to constantly hold everything together. When people try to control life, they're not actually controlling life. They're fighting fear. The fear of not knowing what will happen. The fear that if they let go, everything will fall apart. But Jung once said, what you resist not only persists, it also grows. When you try to control, you're holding tightly to what you don't want. And it's precisely this effort that exhausts you. Imagine standing in the middle of a river. You want the water to flow slower or faster according to your will. You try to hold the water with your hands. To resist the current. You know what happens? The water keeps flowing, as it always does, while you collapse, exhausted. That river never gets tired of flowing. Only people get tired from resisting the flow. Remember the figure of Sisyphus from Greek mythology. The punishment isn't in the work, it's in the inability to let go. Letting go isn't giving up. Letting go isn't abandonment. It's not indifference. Letting go simply means stopping trying to force life to work according to the one scenario you believe is right. Jung emphasized that the soul has its own intelligence. When you let go, you don't lose control. You just make space for your deeper wisdom to take control. Solutions suddenly appear not because you figured them out, but because you stopped disturbing your mind. The mind can only become clear when you stop trying to force it into action. Instead of trying to make everything the way you want it, allow everything to be as it is. This is a gentle acceptance that life has its own rhythm, and the moment you accept, you'll feel yourself begin to breathe. Tension gives way to space and stillness. Because life never asked you to control it. It only asks you to truly exist within it. When you can let go, even for a moment, you'll understand that what you need isn't more control, it's rest. Exhaustion tells you to stop. It doesn't come to tell you to keep running. It comes to tell you to stop. Often we're afraid of silence, of stopping, of doing nothing, of emptiness, because we're used to believing our value comes from being busy. But in reality, the soul doesn't heal in noise, it heals in stillness. Jung once wrote, there is in each of us another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams and tells us how differently he sees us from the way we see ourselves. In silence, the unconscious begins the healing work that the conscious mind cannot do. When you stop, suppressed emotions get a chance to breathe. Tangled thoughts find space to settle. Peace emerges. Peace doesn't come from effort. It comes from giving yourself permission to stop, from not having to fix everything immediately, from existing for a few minutes without doing anything. The still waters. Imagine dropping a leaf into still water. When the water is calm, the leaf doesn't need to struggle. It naturally finds its way. When the mind is too noisy, you can't hear the deepest part of yourself. But when you stop, even for a few minutes, the unconscious begins to reorganize everything. You don't need grand rituals to find peace. When you're burned out from having to be strong, from having to try, stillness begins with very small things. A moment when you turn off the music and allow the room's silence. A meal you eat without looking at your phone. 1 minute where you place your hand on your chest and just breathe without trying to understand, fix, or be anything. In those moments that seem like you're doing nothing, what's actually happening is you're creating space for the soul to return. The self beyond the ego. Jung believed that within every person there's a center deeper than the ego, and he called it the self. The ego speaks in noise. The self speaks only in silence. That's why stillness isn't emptiness. Stillness is the space where the truth inside you can finally be heard. When you're tired, what you need isn't to understand life, it's to return to what's slow and real. Big questions make you more exhausted. Carl Jung once emphasized, the least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. So the soul isn't fed by grand theories, it's fed by the smallest things that have presence, breath, and a sense of aliveness. Small anchors. When you're tired, don't ask, what should I do with my life? Instead, ask, can I take one slow breath? Small anchors are the simplest things we often overlook, but they have the power to return the soul to the body, the mind to the moment, the heart to life. Morning light, the smell of freshly washed sheets, a sip of warm watery births, never begins with grand transformations. It begins with very small, very slow, very human rhythms. You don't need to feel better. You just need to feel a little bit present. Start slowly. Let morning light touch your skin. Let your hands hold a warm cup. Fold your blanket slowly as if you're gently gathering your scattered pieces without rushing. When you place your hand on your chest, feel your heartbeat, not to analyze anything, but just to notice you're still alive. You're still here. That's how exhaustion disappears. That's how peace returns, not by chasing it, but by allowing it to return on its own. Meaning finds you on when you return to those small anchors. You'll notice something many people spend their whole lives trying to understand. You don't need to search for meaning. Meaning will find you, soft as breath, because true meaning never lived in big answers. It lived in your ability to be present in the moment that's emerging right now. You don't need to save yourself when you're burned out to the point where you don't want to try anymore. Maybe you believed you need to save yourself, but the more you try, the more exhausted you become. Jung's deepest reminder quietly appears. You don't need to save yourself. All you need to do is stop resisting the process your soul is already quietly carrying out. The human body doesn't just know how to feel, it knows how to heal. Breathing happens even when you can't control it. The body knows how to return to balance. The soul knows too. What wounds us is not giving ourselves permission to heal. The greatest privilege in life isn't to be more talented or more perfect. It's to live as yourself. Your true self isn't a better version you need to strive for. It's the place you return to when you stop trying to be someone else. We burn out when we try to live as a version our soul wasn't born to carry. Healing doesn't happen when you try to do something great. It happens when you stop trying to do. Neuroscience calls this the nervous system's natural healing state. When you stop straining, the parasympathetic system kicks in. Heart rate slows, breath deepens, peace returns. Peace isn't something you need to chase. It's something that returns when you stop chasing it. Just open your hand. You don't need to save yourself. You don't need to find special power. Just open your tightly clenched fist so that life can touch you and find a place to lift you up naturally, slowly, gently. The exhaustion you're experiencing isn't the end. It's a turning point where the soul is bringing you back to itself. You don't need to be stronger, pretend you're okay, or move forward quickly. Just one moment where you stop and breathe, and life has already begun to quietly reorganize everything inside you. Small promise: if this video helped you understand that the deep exhaustion you're feeling is a wake-up call, and you're ready to stop forcing yourself and surrender to your own natural rhythm, I ask you for a small but powerful promise. Write this sentence in the comments below to express that you're letting go of control and trusting your soul's healing process. I'm letting go of control. With this comment, declare that, as Jung said, peace comes not through effort but through surrender. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our deep videos on soul exhaustion, shadow work, and conscious rest. Remember, your greatest strength is that you don't always have to be strong.